Mickey.
Yes, thank you, Sally. Yes, I'm here, of course, on behalf of Cardin, but maybe before that, I'd like to inform the floor, actually. At this moment, I'm the Director of Business Development of Indica Energy. Indica Energy is an integrated energy company, publicly listed, and actually who took over last year the company where I was the President Director, Petrosi, which is a contract miner, and has been for 25 years owned by an Australian company. So Indica Energy is, among other, owner of the third biggest coal mine. So that's as background. But as Kadin, as Chamber of Commerce, Kadin is actually the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, empowered by the Indonesian law as the Chamber of Commerce for the industry and businesses. We have a new chairman, and it's a new era for Kadin. I'm serving at this moment in the international section. Actually, our chairman have declared that the international cooperation will become very important in the next Kadin tenure. And actually, regarding that, we have heard from previous speakers. We are only in the morning, but so many aspects has been said about opportunities, about issues, about growth, about Asian G20. I think we all have a quite picture, but also the questions were raised that the business sector is very important, because the business, the economy, the growth is going to actually address the prosperity of the people between two countries. So what we are trying to do as Kadin, and for this I have talked this morning with our counterpart, ECCI, with David. What we want to do is that the governments, both governments have agreed to sign a CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, but how can we as business contribute to that? So the idea is that we are going to sign a kind of MOU between the chambers, where the businesses of both countries will be accommodated. So we will try to raise the opportunities and the issues to both governments and have a good dialogue to see how this business development can be accommodated in the new CEPA. And we want to start actually as soon as possible. I just gave the memorandum, the draft to David. So hopefully after this meeting, we can talk about signing such an agreement. And the other thing is, I think, which is also very important is, yeah, it's right that Indonesia is now again on the radar screen, not only from of Australia, but also of EU countries. We have already, as Kadin, organized together with EU community what we call an AIBD. It's a Europe-Indonesian Business Dialogue. The first one last year was in Brussels. I attended that one. And we had the second one end of December in Jakarta, where all the chambers of the EU countries were involved and all the ambassadors actually. And the idea of this dialogue is to raise opportunities and issues, of course, and come after this dialogue to a conclusion paper which will be submitted to all the governments, and the governments will then talk to Kadin and how to solve the issues. We have also, we are establishing a kind of task force after that to have to be in constant dialogue with the governments. In our case, Pa Mahendra is actually the spokesperson of the government. And I would actually suggest that we have a kind of AIBD, Australian Indonesian Business Dialogue, which can be accommodated by Kadin, by AIBC, by IEBC, you know, to make it not only an annual dialogue, but also what follow-ups can be given to the governments, and especially in ramping up this CEPA. So what we want to avoid is that the business is taken by surprise, that the CEPA has been signed by the governments, and we then come afterwards and say, hey, why is this not accommodated? Why have you not asked? So that's the whole idea, and I hope that we can get support of that. We have also in May, we are conducting an ASEAN EU Business Summit in Jakarta. So we believe, from Kadin's side, we believe that this dialogue is important, but can also be really effective in increasing the business. I think that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to leave some time at the end for questions at about 11:15, so we've got a little bit of time now. I was struck by Chris's question this morning. If everybody had one idea to facilitate and generate more investment and business country to country, what would that be? Pak Damano, is the one thing that's a burning issue in your mind a silver bullet? Or I know there's probably lots, but
Yes,
what would be one thing that you would like to see change?
well, I think the education area is a very interesting one. I think we send about 20,000 students to Australia every year. And I think if I got it right, it's about $500 million what they call money come to Australia in that education sector. But those are very small number from students from Indonesia who can enjoy this education in Australia. There are 3 million students graduated from high school every year, but they cannot pay $25,000 a year to come to Australia. But surely they can pay about $1,000 a year if they get the CD or distant learning curriculum. So 3 million young people times $1,000 is $3 billion business. And that can be done through the cooperation between universities in Indonesia and universities in Australia through distant learning. And that will improve a lot of synergy between the two countries. And also by having the human resources in place, more businesses will be able to be developed.
Okay, education. Ian.
Mine is much more micro. It's Australian business has an image of doing business in Indonesia, which has been built up in decades of the 80s and 90s, and often involved, let's say, not so well-informed attempts to break into the market in a very naive way. The President Suharto must have had many thousands of cousins, brothers and sisters from the number of Australian firms who had advisors from them. Trying to get a greater sophistication and to overcome that baggage is going to be one in very small groups, and it's going to be one at the business table. But because the Indonesian economy still has very close government-business links, it's going to involve close government-business collaboration at this site. So the specific idea is to build upon a program which Chris launched after the last AIBC event, which is a series of boardroom lunches which have started already here, which bring together representatives from government agencies which deal with Indonesia, whether it's EFIC, whether it's DFAT, whether it's Austrade, CEOs that have invested successfully in Indonesia, such as CBA, and CEOs of companies that are nervous and looking to invest but need some comfort. Taking those and not only rolling them out in a much more programmatic way in Australia, and last night we had a dinner kindly hosted by Toll and Asialink for Pak Gita, where we had Graham Bradley, the president of BCA, and we're talking about trying to roll that out in collaboration with AIBC and BCA here. We now need to take that to Indonesia, and one hopes that the ambassador will act as a catalyst to get that started with Austrade. And these types of events have worked immensely well in the past year with Malaysia in the NEM to connect foreign investors, domestic investors, and government people under Chatham House rules to learn that you can win in Indonesia. So I've worked there 39 years. I have never paid a bribe. None of the companies we work with paid a bribe. I sat on GE's advisory board there, and they were losing projects to European competitors who paid very large sums to family of President Suharto. They developed techniques to win in that market without paying bribes. And if we have more time in the Q&A, I can go into some of the techniques. But that would be my one very small thought.
People to people, yeah. Okay. Your one wish.
One wish. Well, one wish is more difficult than many wishes. But I would pick up where Ian left off. I think if there could be a closer cooperation in establishing better corporate governance in Indonesia, that would be good. And I also would like to affirm But when my company was established in 2006, I did that without paying any bribes. I got all the licenses. It took a bit longer, but I got them. And all the companies I'm working with, that I'm advising, I would advise the same. Don't ever start paying bribes. And I think if we can cooperate on that issue between the business people from both countries, that would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thanks. Well, having lived in, I think, 4 countries in which the only way to get anything done was paying bribes, from the former Soviet Union through the Middle East to Bangladesh and then into India and Calcutta. I, of course, have never paid a bribe either, and nor would I.
Are you sure?
But I did want to get through Dum Dum Airport in a hurry. I can't quite remember how someone sorted it out for me, but I'm sure something did happen. SME development, I think, actually interesting. It's almost picking up Ian's point a little bit on micro. I think the explosion and opportunity that's given birth through focus on building capability in SMEs and SMMEs is really something that can actually almost happen irrespective of government. And Australia does have strength in that area. And if we can actually really build the capability with our friends in Indonesia around that area, and there's actually a tsunami of support for that and opportunity for that, I think, through the region as well. SMMEs and SMEs, who often don't get to speak at these sorts of fora, by the way, are actually making things happen right now. And the more we can support them, the more we can help build the environment to make it easier for them to just get their businesses up and be successful, sometimes to help them even when they fail or allow that to happen, really creates an opportunity which in a way government can't stop. And I think that's a really positive focus point for us, as well as purportedly the people who are trying to shape the environment to support further investment.
Particularly some of those young people that are coming to Australia
And
for their
old
education.
people, Sally.
And old people. And old people.
Now I'm officially an old person.
Never let it be said. David?
Yes, well, I concur with that. We represent small and medium-sized business throughout Australia through the local chambers, the New South Wales Chamber, the Victorian Chamber, Queensland Chamber and so on. So we deal with those people, and I think Mickey's idea is fantastic, and we will be working on that so that we can provide greater advice to help small to medium-sized business move into Indonesia. The one aspect from my past experience wasn't so much about bribes and so on. I found the professional people in Indonesia extremely good, the accountants and the lawyers, and we established a joint venture. But what we did find, and what I'd like to see change, is the transparency. When we started to make profits, we suddenly found the rules changed, the law was changed, tax was increased on our product as opposed to the local. So I think that level of transparency is very important, and we can have consistency in laws and so on.
I think company tax has just been reduced, hasn't it?
Well, it wasn't specifically company tax.
No, it wasn't. It was other
talking about,
taxes, yes, exactly. I think there's been some reform, hopefully. Mickey?
Yes, I think earlier there was a question, I think, to Pa Mahendra, actually on vocational training. I think this is a big need in Indonesia, capacity building and vocational training, especially in the outer regions, where a lot of industries like mining are coming up, but there's simply not enough training being done. And Pa Mahendra answered about university training. I think the need at this moment is not so much. There's a lot of students having university training in Australia and things like that, but it's more like the semi-skilled and vocational training where maybe Australia and Indonesia can cooperate in the future and building the capacity.
That's where Australia, I think, needs to look, because we've been trying to train a number of IT personnel.
Yes.
From our 15,000 employees. We've got a lot of IT personnel to get them to Australia, and it's very difficult. There are certain visas, but if you don't fit that visa structure, it's extremely difficult. So Australia really needs to look at that, I think, as well, from a government point of view.